I saw a statistic the other day that said almost 20% of adults in this country have mental health issues. Nearly 5 million children in this country have some type of serious mental illness. If you were diagnosed with mental illness, do you think it would be something you'd keep to yourself or share with those around you? People are often afraid that if those around them knew about their illness, it might affect how they are treated or become a problem for them at work. My guests today dealt with mental illness for years in their work. The therapy twins, Jane and Joan, have come up with their own diagnoses and are on a mission to shine the light for everyone on mental illness and make it easier for those suffering to live a normal life. I'm George Siegel, and this is the Tell Us How to Make It Better podcast. Every week we introduce you to people who are working on real-world problems and providing actual solutions. Tell Us How to Make It Better is partnering with the Readiness Lab, the home for podcasts, webinars, and training in the field of emergency and disaster services. Ladies, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. We're so happy to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Now, this whole twins thing is throwing me off. I knew some twins in high school, and that was it for the rest of my life. I never really ran into them, so I had some questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is, how did you decide whose name went first? Why not Joan and Jane instead of Jane and Joan?
Well, Jane will tell you, but she's the older twin. I just ruined it. Go ahead.
So, well, because I came out first, it was very much noted that Lori was the oldest sibling. And when the twins came along, I came out first. So I'm Jane. And so it naturally went Lori, Jane, and Joan. And then what we did decide, though, if you look at our website, we're trying to change it to Joan and Jane.
It doesn't work.
And there's people that will argue, especially over A comes before O in the alphabet.
Yeah.
And they're fighting it. But we're trying. That's another thing
Just
we're
attempting.
just trying to do.
Yeah. Make
Yeah,
things
that's
more
always tough.
even.
Whose name goes first on the marquee? Okay, what is the dumbest twins question you've ever been asked before something I might ask you today?
Oh, the dumbest was
The dumbest one.
Just one. It was, I thought you, are you twins? Because I thought you all died when you were children, because we were teenagers, I think, at the time. I thought that was the dumbest.
Because you're not the only one that hasn't seen twins since high school.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because being under a microscope during that time, high school, you run like hell and you don't want to be with each other because you don't want to be under the microscope anymore.
A fun house.
Yeah, I mean, when my wife was pregnant, they said there's a chance she could have twins, and I said I'm leaving the country if that happens. I don't need that many more children, but it looks like a lot of fun. Okay, and what is the funniest twins story that you had? The last one wasn't so funny; it was just the dumbest one.
Ooh, that's too bad. Yeah, the funniest was it's not the funniest.
The funniest for me was when the love of her life, before he broke her heart, came up from behind me and picked me up. Nothing sexual, but what he whispered in my ear, I went, "Oh, you've got the wrong twin here."
Gross. That is gross.
Well,
wow.
The one that broke your heart.
Ugh. Okay.
She's like, "Who did that?"
I've had many broken hearts. Gee. Okay.
Join the club. So now you two, are you exact identical twins? I mean, you look very much alike.
Some people say they call us mirror twins, and I remember we both had a mole on one side of our nose that everyone made us turn and look, and so we both got those removed.
One eye is smaller. Maybe the mouth droops a little on one side.
Crooked.
The difference is we are the exact height, but Jane has a longer torso and I have longer legs.
Yes, that's
a difference. There's a difference.
Other than the weight issue.
Oh, Jane.
The weight difference, which, can change if I could just master that. But yes, I have a longer torso. Joan has longer legs.
That's a question I wouldn't have touched in a million years, is the weight question. All right. So,
oh, God, I know.
What is the problem that you are working on, and what are you doing to make it better?
The problem is it's an ongoing stigma within the profession and outside of the profession in psychiatry. A doctor has no problem saying, "Oh, I broke my arm back in whatever," and the patient's all excited, or they talk heart attacks or whatever. And as soon as it's mental illness, and even within the profession, substance abusers, they all get to come out with their substance abuse history as professionals. In psychiatry, they frown upon that. And I think it was Vivek Murthy that said, it's excellent if sports people and actors and actresses and people with billions of dollars come out with their mental illness because they have trampolines to fall upon if something happens. But the average person doesn't. And he said, I could be misquoting him. He said, if professionals could just come out, the stigma would go away. And so we did it. We came out with our own diagnoses in an ADHD friendly pamphlet that you will laugh your ass off.
Well, we call it a book, but
Yeah, we do call it a book.
It's considered a book, but it's really a pamphlet. We don't want anyone to, and currently free, which is excellent.
Free.
That's the best part. So what is the pamphlet about? What are we trying to get people to mainstream this? So when somebody famous says they have mental illness, when an actor says they have stage fright and certain things, people give them some space and they go, oh, that's terrible.
Right,
but if the guy sitting next to you at a cubicle in your office, you think people run from that person because they're afraid of them?
People do. I was just looking up the actor Gerard Butler yesterday. And I was reading down, whether or not I would date him. And I'm reading down. And he had some substance abuse issues. And I kind of just skimmed through it. And I felt the shame. I felt like somebody should have edited this. It was shameful. And that's what we're trying to do, is to say, yeah, I had mental illness, but what was it, And
also what's happening about Anne Heche. I mean, she's dead. And yet people that I have heard so far, oh, wow, she had a lot of problems and issues. And they separate mental illness as if your head is already decapitated. We're not Henry VIII's wives. We all have it stuck to us, but we won't connect it. So we thought if we would come out with mental illness with ours which is kind of comical. Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is just make it so it's not so scary.
Yeah.
With Anne Heche, somebody said, oh, she used drugs. Well, that just cut the conversation right off. And what happened to that saying where every saint has a past and every sinner's got,
a future,
or that thing in religion where whoever has that stone. Whatever, who hasn't sinned, cast the stone.
Stones.
Oh, he who is without sin, cast the first stone. Well, what we do, at least over here in America, and I think we kind of did it in our own personal relationship, is one bad thing, you wear that scarlet letter, you are done. Don't ever try to get back into that club again.
Called society even. Yeah.
You're an outcast. Oh, she's got mental illness.
Well, do you think mental illness today is overdiagnosed? Do we use that as an excuse for people?
Yes.
And say, well, they can't just be an asshole. They have to have something wrong with them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Plus, most mental illness is a reaction and a response to human trauma. I can't believe I just learned this. We're retired and have been in the business since early 80s. And in the first DSM in the 50s, even schizophrenia was a reaction to human trauma. And we were just commenting on being privileged to be able to work with Yale University when it was an amazing psychiatric facility. All the psychiatrists back in the day were exploring trauma. So what they had back then worked. And in 87, 88, healthcare changed and the business suits took out what worked. And that's it.
Wait, they took out that word, Joan. And
then in the next DSM in the 60s, it wasn't a reaction to human trauma. It was just labeling. Label, distance. You're nuts. Thank God I'm normal.
Well, one of the things that I've read, so you don't think it's a problem that's getting worse over the years, like between the kind of processed foods people eat, the kind of problems they're facing in the world. So you think maybe it's the same as it's always been, but now we're just putting people in categories?
What's getting worse,
that food thing is
what's
correct.
Getting worse is kicking people out of this club called the human race. We're kicking people out and pretending that we are including everyone. Society does not do what Joan calls the zebra effect.
Yeah.
I mean, have you been to Skid Row?
I actually was there, unfortunately, when I broke my foot, and the guy, the
Yeah.
Uber, only knew that way to the emergency room. And I actually started to cry that my fellow human beings were that exhausted, hot, no water, no facilities to go to the bathroom. And it made me cry. It was horrible.
And the other thing Joan and I were honored to do in the 80s was to see what people don't do anymore in a longer term psychiatric hospital. It was Yale University. And what they would do is bring people in, take them off all of their medications, and they call it a washout. And to see, let's, instead of having 10 meds on board, and I'm exaggerating, let's see what's really going on and, decrease some of this. And I'm walking through Skid Row to get to the pharmacy to get her medication. And I am feeling like I'm back there with all these unmedicated people suffering.
Yeah.
Suffering, whether they were substance abusers or psychotic. It was horrible. And so what is getting worse is, you're right, we're overdiagnosing, but we're picking and teasing out. Talk about, we grew up under a microscope, which twin had the mole on the right versus the left, who has, I was called the fat twin my whole life, fat when I have always been of normal weight. And it does a number on you. And so we're picking people out. Oh, he's just a narcissist. Oh, she's borderline. I mean, we're really separating instead of bringing people together. And it's all about intolerance of something different.
So it's just, you think we brand these people just so we can have an excuse for their behavior?
I think it's out of fear. You're so fearful that somebody could actually react that way. When we want to say that the sickest back in that day, I mean, the stories, you couldn't even put this in a movie because people would say, well, that just isn't true. One young boy was passed around politicians. I'm not even going to say what administration, but it was back in the day. They're all dead. And he was passed around just for sex, and as a young boy into being a teenager for so many years. And I remember running down the hall with him while he wanted to kill people. And, it was really hard to be around them because of what they went through. But, but I fell for the chemical imbalance as well. I mean, we all did. I mean, it's research, science. You know what I want to say to people? I'm a realist. I'm a this. You know what science is? It changes. What about the hypothesis until you get it, until it doesn't? So we have the identical DNA, but different fingerprints of yet. It could be in the future that somebody's going to find out that twins actually have identical fingerprints one time in 800 million. So that's what science is to me. I laugh when people say, yeah, but whatever.
Well, we see with mental illness, extreme examples with mass shootings. Now with homeless people, as you were bringing up Skid Row, the amount of people that, I mean, there's something, obviously, if you don't have the means and you have to live someplace, but a lot of these people are suffering with mental illness.
Yeah.
A lot of people walking around the street. How do we make that better? It seems like an impossible thing to accomplish.
It is probably impossible short term, but one guy in our lives that we actually speak with almost every day, because one of us had him
As a husband.
Yeah. He has 3 degrees from Yale University. He's one of the most humble persons I have ever met. When we were first married, Yale would call our house, the landline, and beg him to finish his degree, because he would not finish his business degree at Yale University because they took out the humane part of a corporation. And I remember he wanted to go on and actually be an APRN, and he was going to go be a nurse at 50 and then go get another degree. And he finished that master's degree in business. But what he said was, other parts of the world have a system in effect that you can't have a certain amount of billionaires or millionaires if children are still starving. So he said if he were in office, he would get the 100 most rich people in the room and say, we have to solve the childhood abuse neglect problem. They're dying. And ask them how you're going to take it, because you're going to have to give a little to actually get a little respect, because we will shame you that your wealth is sitting on all children. And that's unfortunate that we don't care about adults, because children are resilient is the most false statement I have ever heard in my life, because we may be alive, but you don't like our behavior anymore. And I am a professional, and I have had 2 arrests in my life. And you know what? A guy said to me, "You've been arrested? That's why I trust you." I've never trusted somebody who's never been arrested, because they've always followed the rules.
What'd you get arrested for?
One was larceny, and the other one was unfortunately a DUI. Actually, fortunately, so I don't even have one glass anymore and get behind the wheel. It's actually fortunate. Both experiences are fortunate. Every experience is fortunate, really. Even my most horrific sexual assault is a fortunate incident, because truly you do have other passions in life to help others once you have been through trauma. You can not only recognize it, that's a gift that you can now recognize that in another. You have the opportunity to help somebody else, and there's where the domino effect is.
Well, so a lot of the things that you deal with or talk about are coming from experience. When we see people protesting or rioting or arguing about things, are some people just doing it because they think it's something they need to do, but they have no life experience to really back it up?
Oh, well, I've never actually probably picketed, but I think I'm sure a lot of people have experience, and then the rest of the people are like, "Oh, that looks like a good idea. I think I believe in that today."
But Jane talks about DNA a lot, and when you've had a child, because I've never had one, you're passing along DNA, including emotional DNA, anxiety, all the way to a strong person who constantly gets back up. Jane, don't you talk about that?
Well, yeah. You know, it's in those articles that say
Children again.
the mother-child bond is, more scientific than we thought, because you know what, man, and I'll include women, what we humans have to do is say, why don't we do an experiment on these bunnies? This bunny just had 6 little bunnies. Let's take those bunnies, hook her up to so we can monitor her respiratory rate and her heart rate. Let's take every baby one by one, farther away than she can sense, and let's murder those bunnies and see if she knows it from a distance. That's what we have to do. But because you know what came out of medicine? Because we're so old. Can I just tell you, wearing gloves was an insult to the patient, unless that person had something like leprosy or COVID, highly contagious. Then you would have to do those kinds of things. But we take out the human touch, or the mother that spent the last 2 weeks with her 2-year-old and noticed that, geez, this 2-year-old is usually wired, looking like they're on meth, running around exploring everything, and then exhausted. And why is he lying on the couch so much? And he's not really eating. Well, you take him to the doctor, and the doctor says, "You are a brilliant mother. You diagnosed pneumonia." Well, no, I didn't. Well, I guess I did. But, people forget to pay attention to that person. We hear mental illness. What do we want to do? We want to run away. What they did a big disservice to psych when they came out with the statistic that a certain type of schizophrenic, which that's not even, we don't call them paranoid schizophrenic anymore, I guess. But that particular type of person might have been 1% more violent than the rest of, or 3%, and it just scared a nation. And most of the school shootings are done by people that have been neglected from the system, or in a lot of, in my opinion, I'll speak for myself and people that I've spoken to, in the wrong system. And right now, society has left psychiatry to sort of deal on their own. And we have a hierarchy. Substance abusers are the worst, so we give them less care. When they're symptomatic, we give them less care.
Absolutely.
When a diabetic is symptomatic with a high blood sugar or a low blood sugar, they get more care.
Yep.
Not a substance abuser.
I just want to say that sometimes people don't realize how bad. The one woman who used, which means she was symptomatic, went to get back into her shelter. And they said, oh, they took her urine and she used, and it happened to be a horrible snowstorm in Connecticut, and she died. They kicked her out. She died with her sweatshirt over her
Behind a dumpster, she froze to death trying to warm herself with her sweatshirt. We kick them out. We tell people to kick their children out of the home.
Yeah.
And it was a man from Poland. When I first started, I was so honored. This man was a Holocaust survivor. He grew up in Poland, and he was a little boy when the Nazis took he and his mother to Auschwitz, I believe. And I learned something I never knew. He actually went to school for a little while every day. He had a little schooling. He was like a kindergartner.
In the Holocaust?
In the camp. But what he said, his son was a substance abuser. And what he said was, what you people told me to do does not compute in my mind and my heart, that you would never send your child out the door. You would get more care, but our entire society gives less care.
You know, I want to say something. This is Joan. When I went to school, I had the privilege of somebody from another country to come and talk to the substance abuse classes, because we were going to be prescribing. And he mentioned about 5 different substances, you know, alcohol, think post-traumatic stress, but depression, anxiety, insomnia, cocaine, depression, or ADHD, or some type of learning. Who cares about marijuana? It's so helpful. Like, let's get rid of the negative. But when he said opiates, he said, I don't want you to repeat this to anyone. And I'm thinking, I probably misheard that, because if you don't repeat this, how are we going to move forward? First, think anger. You never want to say that to a patient anyway. Well, you seem angry. That's like, you know, did you want to get hit, Joan? These are the things you should say. Calm down, relax, or whatever. You don't go do that. Anyway, what he said about heroin after the anger, he said, remember, it is something that person needs to forget. And again, I'm going to say in therapy, please say that, but also please say, do not tell me this. You can still heal from this, because when somebody says it out loud and another human being hears it, unless you're both veterans and have been in that war, you feel judged. So I didn't want to hear what they needed to forget. Unfortunately, quite a few told me. So I do tear up a lot. Anywho, it was that, and that's crazy, because it's just crazy.
Years ago, I was playing in a golf tournament with a doctor who dealt with a lot of substance abuse. And we were talking about Darryl Strawberry, the baseball player. And I said, boy, I have no sympathy for this guy. He had everything in the world going for him, and he just threw it all away on drugs. And he said to me, that's why you should have sympathy for him. That is the power of addiction. Addiction is so powerful. He was willing to throw his career away, or threw his career away, because he couldn't control it. So when people are dependent on drugs, when people are alcoholics, when people are into amphetamines or opioids, are we saying that that's a mental illness that we need to understand, or is it an addiction? Are they the same thing?
I want to say, first and foremost, it is a reaction or a response to something. Nobody, I mean, okay, I want to say nobody just goes and says, I'm going to be an alcoholic. A lot of alcoholics I treated, their father brought them to the bar when they were infants, and there was beer in their baby bottle. So I don't think it's you know, some people are physically, yes, some people get addicted faster. Some people have a higher tolerance to pain. Some people have a higher tolerance to life, and they don't, you know, need to reach. But what we're reaching for, there's a reason for why we're reaching for it. But the other part was,
and there's also been a study, of course, I don't know if anyone knows this, but mice and rats are considered like the best mothers ever. They probably put all us humans to shame.
I've heard that.
Everyone that's worked with them, from scientists to the people that are the caregivers and have to gas them at the end of the experiment and kill every last one of them.
Had in our
but
offices.
One of the experiments was done at, you mentioned the word, addiction, and should we label it, or what is it, a mental illness
or a disease?
First of all, every living thing out there has some form of addiction. And if you back it up to may all be fed and let nature work itself out, I don't know if you know, trees apparently communicate with each other. And one of the things trees will do, let's say there's a row of some trees and bushes. Well, when somebody didn't get enough water, the one that got a lot of water is going to give up, is not going to take a drink, so the other one can survive, because they know, like Native Americans knew here, that if you don't have a cooperative society going on, none of us survive. So all things, living things, including humans, can suffer from an addiction. And what I believe is so much fun is finding out which one that is for you, because I would never have guessed in 1,000 years that it was cigarettes for me. It was the hardest thing I had ever had to give up. And I have a funny story that I'm not going to tell right this second about why I started, but I lied straight to my son's face. And that was probably my most shameful moment of my life. But so the experiment with the mice is get them all addicted to something that also has a physical withdrawal as well. And then let's see what happens.
Yes.
They all loved every drug. They loved it. They loved it. Which animals knew exactly when to stop? Because, you know, once again, they're brilliant because they have nurtured that intuition, that sixth sense that we pretend doesn't exist. Oh my goodness, we think everything is science. And anyway, you know, like human touch, right? So anyway, the one thing, so they keep them locked out. They make them go through withdrawal. They feel the pain of withdrawal, and some medications withdrawal kills you. Some it's so uncomfortable. And the one thing that each mouse chooses over that substance, as painful as it is to give away, is freedom.
Yeah. Freedom.
So we're not free. Our society, this one especially, because you use that word socialism. Oh my goodness, the negative connotations that all humans could have access to healthcare will start a war.
Yet they give to the police fund. Hello, socialism. The library, the public school. I mean, all these socialized, wonderful things, the parks and everything. They love
socialized.
But medicine.
Oh my God! Now you see, is anyone sick? You see how great America is? We are now. We're the young ones. And we love being these young John Wayne, proud, and I'm going to do it all on my own.
That's important what you said.
Every single
anyone who is sick. Did you hear what she just said? In nature, that's all we're acting like, actually. We're actually being normal.
We're leaving them.
If you have an albino duck, that albino is going to risk the squad of ducks to get noticed in nature. He's not blending in. We saw it at one of those parks. Our parents kept trying to, we were so negative. We were drawn to negativity. She kept trying to give us vacations, and I saw all the horror in it. And I was like, the duck, and they're leaving the duck. And she was screaming. She wanted to be, they had to peck it until she stopped following them. Oh my God. So that's what it is. That's why we can't have
survival of the fittest. And now, do you see how horrible it is now? Because everyone is afraid to speak because there's of that thing called cancel culture. So we have these brilliant people that are loved by millions, and they say something, and they do something. You know what we have to, I believe, could we please get back? I mean, I am the mother of a son. I'm the mother of a son.
Oh boy.
And if I heard what I heard years ago, there were a group of, I did not have a child back then. There was a group of mothers of sons and daughters that were friends since, let's say, junior high. So these guys and girls are friends, buddies. And sometime in high school at a party, a couple of the guy friends, or I don't know who, some of the boys raped the girls. Now, if that came to me and that was my son, this is what you might not hear from me. Those mothers were defending their sons and calling the other girls the names that just like we do in the courtroom. What were you doing out at 2 o'clock in the morning? And I'm sorry, you had on a what? A skirt. And how short was that? You must have been you had a few drinks. You let the boy kiss you. You must have been asking for it. Well, first of all, I would have kicked my son's ass. And my son knew this. One day he was junior high, I believe. And the word slut came out of his mouth. It was like I was on radar. I stopped what I was doing. I said, whoa, 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 time out. I said, first of all, that word, I will never, you cannot say that word ever again. If I hear about it, you're dead. And I also said, now you remember, you're judging someone that you have not walked in their shoes. I mean, Joan and I, being therapists, we have heard some stories that are so humiliating that these people, that some people say, my God, no one's ever admitted that to me. They're humiliating stories. And one of the things that's going to go right up to us being so passionate about breaking that stigma, and it's not just mental illness. The girl says to me, 3 things. That's what brought her to my chair. And, you know, one was, I think she slept with someone the first date. Maybe she had an abortion, and there was something else she did. And she was very embarrassed. And I just looked up from my pen and paper, and I said, tell me something I haven't done. And now through the grapevine, she knew Joan was working in a place, and this girl was there.
And she said that was the only reason she continued with therapy, because every other therapist judged her for that immediately. How, I don't even know, but you feel it. Because I've gone to therapy and felt judged. I want to get back to what Jane said that is so important. Any person, male or female, that spoke of hypersexuality and things they weren't proud of and what is wrong with me, every single one of them was either they were traumatized as a child. I don't know.
And usually,
we're not going to judge that it was just.
It was often sexually. It was often a family member.
And they keep saying, "No, I wasn't raped. No, I wasn't raped." You had Did you feel sexually assaulted by that person touching your thighs, your arm? There are ways to feel sexual and raped by somebody's eyes. And as a child, you don't understand that. So it's way worse. I've been sexually assaulted as an adult. And I always told my female clients and male clients that yours was worse. You were a child. That's how much more confusing it was. I knew exactly what was happening. Okay.
Well, let's try to bring this back around so there's some hopefulness here. Because
Yeah.
a lot of this is pulling me right down into the ground. I'm going, wow, okay, this is a huge problem.
Do you see how dark we can get?
It's a touch dark, but so let's bring some light to it. What can people do as an action item to try to help with the problem?
To help with the problem, because everything seems to be a reaction to human trauma. What we did back in the 80s, and it should be done today, it is the zebra effect. When something happens, like the lion goes in or tiger to get one of those zebras, if that zebra dies, bye, we're out of here. But if that zebra doesn't die, the herd brings that zebra back and allows for regression, allows for acting out behavior, allows for the reaction, and still feel you're part of the herd. What we do is separate. So what I'm saying is, whatever you like to do, okay, you don't want to do it alone, find somebody to do it with, because when you go out in public, or exercising, or to eat, to movies, for music, silence, if you do that with another human being and you feel accepted and safe, therein starts your healing process. Therapy comes in. You can come to therapy. Jane has very funny stories about how long you can vent for, but yeah, eventually it turns into vomit, and you could aspirate and get worse. So there is a limit to how long you're going to stay. Us, for example, we stayed in it for too long. As you can see, give us a microphone, we'll go negative on you. You need to stop that negativity. Thank you. We will leave our copay at the door for you. Thank you for that, to turning us around to laughing.
Listen, before we labeled everybody with a mental illness, we had things called compassion, tolerance, and forgiveness. Look them up if you need to. But one of the ways we healed our relationship, because I know for myself, I was extremely intolerant. And who do you take things out on is the person you trust the most. That would be my identical twin. And it wasn't until I learned a little compassion, a little tolerance, and boy, I didn't realize forgiveness was quite important. Where then things started turning around, and I'm not the funny twin. Joan's the funny twin. But I actually have more of a sense of humor. The more I use those 3 words, act them, life is a little lighter, rather than I feel I programmed my brain with the glass was half empty. And at the exact same time as it's half empty, it's half full, because what's on my list to watch by myself is, I never saw it. It was won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Film at some point. It's Life is Beautiful. It was the Italian man that gets in the concentration camp with his child, or the Nazis invaded, and he has to make it less horror like for his child.
So they make it into a game. I saw it at the theater.
But anyway, everything's
Humor
too serious
saved my
and
life.
light. I mean, yes, it's light versus dark, and we're tipping the scales. I mean, one small thing and people are going dark.
But I'll tell you how it won't work if you're me. I used to be atheist, a realist. I'd call myself scientific. I'm not going to lie.
Methodical.
Yeah, whatever. And what unfortunately works is you have to lie to yourself at first. If you want to have a self-esteem, you actually have to say, I'm beautiful, and I inside and out, and I do this and that. It was a social worker who said it. Why can't you lie to yourself, Joan? I thought, okay, I can try. And then the other thing is, we have such a hard time with, but past, present, and future. Once a loser, always a loser. No, sir. Native Americans knew that you speak of the present only. And if you want rain, you envision that it's already raining. Those two things, the Native American way and the social worker saying lie to yourself, that really jump starts you into positivity. Because at first we are negative, and we have programmed our brains to be that.
And also maybe just start being nicer to other people.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Forgot that.
And a little tolerant. That, you know what people don't realize, and we're identical twins, and Joan sometimes would walk around like, I don't get it. Same DNA. How did she come up with that thought when mine was the opposite? And I'm thinking, Joan, different life experiences, different viewpoints on things, that would be normal. And we don't even have freedom of speech anymore, because once you disagree with the other person, now you got to shut them up, rather than saying, wow, I never thought of it like that. Tell me more about why you feel like that.
Oh, because you'll get a lot more. Sometimes you don't want all of it, but you'll get it.
I mean, just
Okay,
it's right. Be a little nicer.
Yeah. So how do people get your book / pamphlet? What's the best way to
it is on Amazon. Unfortunately, right now it's a Kindle that's for free. So it's an ebook. And it is Under the Hood, but also put in Therapy Twins, because we didn't realize how many people have a book called Under the Hood.
And Joan can tell you why, but it's even easier if you start with .uk, because for sweet.
Oh, Amazon.uk. Yeah. England really, did they give us a chance at first? You know, some bridal magazine, celebrity magazine.
But a lot of the mental health arena, and one of the reasons is, it's if Americans could just look up and around and see that there are a few countries, Switzerland, Denmark, Portugal, and how they changed the whole substance abuse theme from criminal to a public health thing, which basically opened up services and attitudes decreasing.
And by the way, there were 0 deaths. Right? I don't know, with the last check, there was 0.
If we could just look at that and see how they solved their crises of death, what Joan was saying. But no, instead we would rather come after the prescriber
and watch their children die. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands, but
pretend we're going after drug dealers. We're going after the low to mid-level drug dealer that's just trying to
Jane,
put
we're going
bread
negative
on
again.
the table. But anyway,
want to end on a happy note. So how do people follow you on social media? How do people consume what you're about here?
Everything is just Therapy Twins. 1 word, 2 words, at Therapy Twins, whatever. It's the twins. We what do you call it? Patented the name only because a physical therapy group wanted that for a chair. And I thought, we're the Rappy Twins on Twitter. A lot of rap artists started following us, and they thought we were They thought we were the Rappy twins, not the therapy twins.
What we promised,
And
is-
we are.
What we
see?
promised is the book is a lot funnier than what we were.
Yeah.
We just probably, if you gave us another hour, I think we could have gotten
Stayed
more.
positive.
But we are very passionate about the disservices. But we promised the book is funny,
Yeah.
and there's a few solutions in there as well.
And therapy twins versus the Rappy twins are spelled identically. So there you go. Different perspective. Boom.
Awesome. And I would never want to dismiss the things that you're emotional about. I mean, there are obviously
Oh,
things
thank
that really matter to you. And I think that's great that you have that kind of passion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, hey, thank you for coming on. I appreciate your time and continued success.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Your copay is at the door. Okay.
Very good. I have good insurance, but it may take me 6 to 9 months to pay you. Thank you so much for stopping by and listening to today's Tell Us How to Make It Better podcast. If you want to get more information about Jane and Joan, the therapy twins, you can find it in the show notes. And if you have any questions or comments for me, there is also a contact link in the show notes. And I'd love to hear your questions or thoughts about what you'd like to hear on future episodes. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.